Morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you.
As we turn our attention to Talking HR with HRMAB, it's that segment on a Wednesday morning where we sit for just a moment and we really take life seriously, because what happens in the workplace is very, very important. We want to look today at a very serious subject as well, the whole question of independent contractors or employee. That's a question mark. Are there subtle differences? And if we can identify the differences, that would go a long way indeed. So let's talk about that now as we talk HR with HRMAB. We're joined this morning by our good friend, the president of HRMAB herself, Joan Underwood. And with her is Kristin Turton, who is the founder and principal attorney of KCT Chambers. Good morning, both of you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us. Joan, I'll start with you. Why is this such an important subject area to focus on, independent contractors or employees?
If we get it twisted, we can really incur some liability, legal and otherwise. So it's really important that we don't see them as being six and half a dozen, as being interchangeable. So there are legal differences, and there are also differing business imperatives that would inform or even dictate which option we choose to pursue.
A lot more now businesses are going that particular route, and they'll say to you, because, you know, we lower our expenses, it really divests us of the burden of having staff and all of the things that come along with that. But you're saying it could come with some legal loopholes. I want to look a little bit now at some of those, and this is where you come in, Kristin. Kristin, what are some of the legal differences between the two categories and these special arrangements that occur in businesses today?
When we're talking about an employee versus an independent contractor, we're really speaking about someone who's working under a contract of service to serve another person and their interests, versus someone who is working on their own, to their own account, primarily as essentially an entrepreneur, a business owner of their own, providing specific services and being paid for that. The differences are not simple in that there's no one test, but an example I can give you is, for example, that you would have a maid who works in your home every day. They clean and they cook. They're under your direction. You determine when they can go on vacation. You determine their hours of work. You pay them periodically. You deduct NAS and PAYE for them. And they are largely under your control and they work for you. They don't have the option of working for others and earning income during the hours that they're to work for you. That is distinguishable from, for example, a cleaning service or a person that you hire to come in once a week or twice a week or every 2 weeks to clean your home in a particular way that satisfies you, to deal with particular areas that you identify. They work for themselves. They earn income when they see fit. They can agree with you on a time when they will come, but they determine how long it takes them to finish the job that they've been asked to do. And ultimately, they're not really under your control. They're just providing you with an individual service. And that is, there's a significant difference between the two in terms of the obligations that you have when you engage a person as your employee versus when you engage them as an independent contractor.
Okay, scenario 2 is the independent contractor. Scenario
Yes.
1, the maid who is under my conditions and I deduct and I pay and so forth, is the employee. So where's the subtle differences? What are some of the subtle differences between the two that we need to really zone in on so that we don't cross the line and therefore find ourselves in some serious litigation?
Well, what I would say is that the example I gave is a fairly clear-cut example. Mm-hmm. But what you can have are more complex arrangements where you have someone who's working for an extended period of time. They are expected to be available, for example, for the employer or the person who's engaged them. And you find that there are elements of control in how they do what they do. And this is where sometimes the complications come. In reality, the main question, which it seems the courts will focus on, is whether this person can realistically be classified as an entrepreneur, as an independent person. They will weigh several factors. They'll look at, for example, they will look at how much control do you really have over this person? Can they work for others? Are they economically dependent on your business? Do you deduct NAS and PAYE for them? Are they integrated in the business in that their function is essential to its operations, and they're also required to participate actively in the other aspects of the organization, like team meetings and office events? Is there a requirement or is it optional? Do they provide services to you in a manner that you dictate, as distinct from them identifying how they're going to perform it, and you simply provide a deadline to them? Those are some of the factors that will largely be considered to decide whether a person is an employee or an independent contractor. It's largely about control versus actual independence from the organization.
Joan, this is a serious subject indeed. And so, but a lot of businesses will say to you, you know, it's, as I said earlier, it's more cost effective for us to go the route of the independent contractor. And so they make the business case for that. So what are some of the pitfalls that if we don't get it right, we can destroy the business?
Cost effective, it's important to bear in mind not just your immediate costs, but the potential costs down the road. And in addition to the financial costs, you need to look at the opportunity costs associated with the choice of how you will proceed. Because Kristin has highlighted that control is one of the primary determining factors in whether you have a true employer-employee relationship or the individual is an independent contractor. So if you have to cede control in order to legitimately make a case that you do in fact have an independent contractor relationship, what does the relinquishing of that control mean for the business? Because if this duty, the responsibility, is part of your core business, the essence of what you produce or the services that you deliver, do you want to relinquish control of it? So again, not just factoring, oh, I don't have to take care of NIS and PAYE, so it's cheaper for me. What are the opportunity costs associated with relinquishing that control?
You see, there's some natures of some business that require people to be regularized in that kind of sense in terms of expectations by your clients. And so you, for want of a better term, you shift them accordingly. But you're saying to us, we run the danger when we do that in saying, okay, Joan, yours is every Monday, Tuesday, and Friday, and that will run until we say we don't like it like that anymore, or you have an objection to it. Are we crossing the line in such an arrangement?
Well, let's be clear, and Kristin highlighted the pitfalls.
Yeah.
Because just because you say you only come here Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, that doesn't mean that it's not an employer-employee relationship, right? Because again, it comes down to the control with some other variables, the control of how you manage the work. So, for example, the way I have structured my business is that I don't have employees, but I work in a gig economy. So when I have a project, I may say, okay, I'm going to need a graphic designer to work with me on this project. I'm going to need, whatever skills I need. And I go to the market to procure those skills. I don't then direct that graphic designer. I tell them what I want to accomplish. I give them a design brief, but they then determine what software they're going to use to create the designs. They work within the design brief, but I do not control the how of how they get their work done. And I certainly don't tell them what times during the day they need to be working on the assignment. As long as they deliver to my quality specifications at the deadline that I have provided, then that is what their obligation to me is, not for me to manage the minutiae of how they get the work done.
We're talking of the independent employee here, folks. Not employee, independent contractor, indeed. And you see, those slips, even in business, we
Yes.
make today. And so, Kristen, talk to us a little bit about some of those other pitfalls, because Joan clearly defined it. But there are some jobs that require regularity. For instance, if you're a bus driver, and so you only have so many bus drivers, and you have a schedule to meet. And these people are operating independently, but yet you want to deliver a certain quality service. You can cross that line based upon what Joan's definition. I can cross that when I say, buses will leave at 6 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and so forth. You, Joan, you're the driver at 6, 8, and 10. I've crossed the line. Have I, Kristen?
Exactly. I think in looking at pitfalls, we have to be conscious of the obligations that an employer has, the requirements to impose certain policies and systems to direct, for example, the disciplinary process in terms of that person, to make sure that there's a safe system of work for them. And if we do not select the correct method, that is where we can have several issues in terms of liability financially and criminally. I think it's not sufficient to say, well, I've told this person when they're supposed to work. There are several other factors that have to be considered, and we have to look at what is the actual contract that's in place, what is the actual arrangement that as it is operating, and how is everything being performed.
Strat is in place, and that the wording could be perfect, the wording could be right. It's also the execution of that contract where we can slip up. So what's the role of HR in trying to get it right, so we all get it right? And how can HR keep an oversight so that we don't infringe on what's within the 4 pages and the edges of that contract?
I think it's essential for everything to be documented, but for there to be consistency in performance. So it has to be clear if, for example, the person is an employee, it has to be clear exactly how they are supposed to operate within the 4 corners of the contract. If they're an independent contractor, it has to be very clear the extent to which they can operate independently of the organization. And that means an HR person should not say to an independent contractor, you must come to this staff meeting. They should not indicate to them obligations outside of the production of, for example, that one service that they're supposed to be performing. And it has to be absolutely clear the extent to which that person can run their own business. They can do what they see fit to manage their business outside of the business that you are carrying on.
Joan, in the building, there's an HR office with an HR manager who one would hope is paying attention to those kinds of things. And if they're not, then we run into the danger. So what do you see to be the role of HR in ensuring that the definitions of those 4 corners are applied and adhered to?
All right, so this is why we say that HR needs to be positioned within your organization as a strategic business partner so that they can guide and direct you in terms of the appropriate choices to be made. So, for example, in strategic workforce planning, we typically identify roles within the organization as being either mission critical. So we can't be here doing this if we don't have this role. We will not be able to fulfill our purpose. So you have mission critical, or is at a lower level of importance than mission critical, but you need them to operate the organization. And then you have support functions. Now, as a strategic business partner, for your mission critical positions, you want to ensure that the persons who fulfill that role are under your direction and control. So you don't want to have independent contractors because that role is so vital, so essential to the success of the organization. However, there may be support functions that you need, but which you can outsource. You don't have to have that level of control. So, for example, just yesterday, a HRMAB member reached out to me and she said, we're looking to outsource payroll. Do you have any recommendations? So we were able to send her a list of firms that that's what they do. That's their core business. So they would be independent contractors to whom you could outsource your payroll function, and you hold them accountable for having it done on time without any errors, etc. Another factor that will determine whether you go the route of an external contractor or an employee is the period of time for which you require that particular expertise. Some of your needs may be seasonal. So at a certain time of year, you need to have certain things done. So you don't want to carry that employee on your payroll as a permanent employee when your need for the expertise is only seasonal. Another thing is if the expertise is very expensive and you don't have enough demand to hold that person. So, for example, organizations may do training. That doesn't mean that they have to have training personnel as employees, but rather that they can contract the individual to come in and provide training as required. So these are some of which HR can provide guidance and advice to the business to ensure that you make the right decisions legally. You don't expose yourself to any potential losses in the legal system or financially. And as Kristin mentioned, there is even the potential for criminal liability if you don't get it right.
Take a deep breath, everybody. Take a deep breath, indeed. It is a serious subject because that seems now to be the way that businesses are operating via the strange combination of employee and independent contractors, and then crossing the line back and forth ever so often and claiming not to be an employer of an independent contractor, indeed. So we got to get this right. But John mentioned something very critical, which was that a member reached out. And so, as I always say, membership comes with benefits. Joel gave an example of how HRMAB helps its members, indeed. So if you are not yet, as an HR practitioner, a member of HRMAB, go today, hrmab.org.bb, and sign up to be a member of HRMAB, indeed, because it comes with true benefits. True, real benefits day in, day out. And Joe, we're just days away, by the way, from the boot camp. Can you just tell us a little bit briefly about what we can expect?
Absolutely. And Kristin and I have just touched the tip of the iceberg on one of our bootcamp pillars, which is employment law. So when you go over to the website, in addition to signing up to join the organization, if you haven't already done so, register for bootcamp so that we can help you in terms of navigating employment law, mastering the numbers, data and finance, data analytics and finance, managing change successfully, and of course, aligning your HR strategy with your overall business strategy. Want to say a special thank you to our pillar champions. We have PricewaterhouseCoopers, who are going to take us through the numbers. Deloitte is going to help us with managing change. We met Khadijah Moore in an earlier episode. She is going to show us how to align strategy. And we have attorney Michael Koyman and my colleague and friend Brittany Brathwaite, who are going to help us with the employment law. But you don't have to wait until May 16th and 17th to start getting these gems of wisdom and guidance, because once you register, you get access to our conference application, where we are already starting to have some very interesting discussions. You can share what challenges you're experiencing, hear how your peers are dealing with them, hear from the experts as well. So do go to hrmab.org.bb and sign up.
Well said indeed. And with that, I say thank you. Joan Underwood, President of HRMAB, indeed, our friend. And Kristin Turton, who is the founder and the principal attorney with KCT Chambers. Today we took a look at independent contractors versus employees, a very, very important pillar that we need to pay closer attention to as practitioners of HR, because supervisors, online people, we're all practitioners of human resources indeed. And so again, membership is important, but paying attention to how we treat to the people with whom we engage is also equally important. Thank you much, ladies, for joining us this morning.
Morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you.